We were joined by Luke Conlon of Men to Men, and this morning we are joined by Fraser Watson, award-winning journalist and pundit on the Pure West Sports Show. Good morning, Fraser. How are you?
Morning, Tom. Actually, a bit of mist about for a change. It's a nice few sunny mornings, so it's been a shame what I've woken up to this morning, but overall very good.
I know I haven't got my shorts on this morning. I risked it yesterday. And Tammy, how are you doing this morning?
Yeah, really well, Tom. Lovely to be back.
Good, and it's Men's Health Week. We've been talking about physical health, but also kind of positive well-being. That's been the primary driver of our conversations this week so far. And Luke was talking yesterday about Men to Men and the services that they offer to help men develop Skillshare friendship circles, and to make sure that men can come together in a safe space and actually share a space where they can talk openly with each other. We've got Fraser on this morning to talk about physical health and team sports due to your background in sports. And I just want to ask Fraser, from the off, why is sport so important to you?
Oh, it's important to me for the same reason important to so many people, Tom. You know, there is, of course, the physical well-being side, and I guess the mental well-being as well, and also the camaraderie side of it as well. I think the social aspect is why so many people are involved in it. It's being part of a group, isn't it? No matter what level you play at, it's having interaction with people. It's having good times with people as well. You have special memories which aren't necessarily on the sports field. You know, they can be afterwards through your social gatherings, or sometimes just in training as well. And then I think it helps give so many people a sense of purpose, you know, and it gives you something to aim for and something to focus on outside your normal working life as well.
Yeah. What I like there is that you talk about it doesn't matter at what level that your participation is at, it's still just as important. I remember when I played rugby for a season before getting injured, I deliberately picked the like one of the lowest ranked teams to join, because it wasn't about getting silverware. It was just about coming together and training every week and being part of something that had a competitive edge to it. And I think that competitiveness is actually quite important for the everyday person. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not all about being a professional game and being at the top level, Tom. Like you said, you can be at the lower end of the scale at the amateur game, but if you're feeling part of a team, you're feeling part of a group, and you still have the same aims in some ways of what those professional people do. It may be on a lower scale, but you're aiming to improve. You're aiming to interact with teammates and so on. And it's not just, you know, on the field and playing and training. It can be watching as well. You know, we see how much fun people have, don't we, gathering to watch games. It's not necessarily the situation at the moment because of the coronavirus 19 pandemic, what have you. But Euro 2021 at the moment, usually we'd see teams gathering together, wouldn't we, in their old clubhouses. We'd see fan zones and pubs packed. Sport can bring people together in so many different ways, and that goes both on and off the field.
Yeah, I like that. And Tammy, Fraser's drawn on a very important distinction there. So it's not all about necessarily being the participating force in the sports team. It's about being an observer. It's about being there in the moment and being able to share the experiences that's being happening on the pitch. And we're seeing with the Euros, some stadiums are not filled to capacity. Hungary was, but whether that was right or wrong, we'll find out in a couple of weeks' time, no doubt. But similar to what Luke was talking about yesterday, Tammy, it's being in the room where it happened, to coin a musical theatre phrase whilst we're talking about sport.
Yeah, it's that social networking. There's so many benefits from that social interaction, that mutual support, resulting from getting together, improving the mood, that self-confidence, the self-esteem, it's just engaging with other people.
Yeah, fantastic. And Fraser, the biggest change that's happened to sport over the last 15 months is that there hasn't been as much sport as we got used to. And I know that Tammy has got some thoughts on this. So Tammy, what are your kind of, I suppose I'm going to say fears, but is that too strong, or is that a real concern?
I'm not sure about fears, but it's an observation, that I just wanted just ask Fraser. Do you think post-COVID there's going to be like a low uptake of men returning to team sport? And if you do, why?
I think it's certainly a great concern, Tammy, and I think you can come from both sides of the argument of this. I think on the one side, I think there'll be a lot of fears in terms of security. Almost there'll be a lot more fears about men about spending time of the week, having that taken up through team sports. And what I mean by that is obviously so many people's jobs have been on the line during COVID-19, haven't they? You know, some people have been financially insecure, and now the thought of possibly getting, especially maybe in the more physical team sports like your rugby or the football, the thought of being injured now and perhaps having to miss work, or especially if you're self-employed, take extended time off is going to concern a lot of people. So I think people may be a lot more conservative about putting themselves, what they see, at risk in that respect. You've got other aspects as well, I suppose, especially during the first lockdown. People got used to spending perhaps more family time, young children, wives, partners, so on, and they would have been used to having their partners around on weekends and perhaps doing things and spending times, or even just going for family walks, especially in the summertime. They weren't necessarily able to before, and realizing that time is precious. And those people may be reluctant now to return to team sport. I think there could be another side of it as well, Tammy. I think during the lockdown, a lot of people wanted to keep fit, and to do that, they perhaps do their own thing. A lot of people you saw the uptake on Strava, for example, of people doing more running and walking and cycling, because that was one of the few things that people were permitted to do. And a lot of people would have got so used to staying fit that way, and realize that they could perhaps get fit in their own time. You can go running anytime. You're not necessarily dictated to that you have to play a match at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, and maybe you've got accustomed to that as well and got into that. So yeah, I think your concerns are very genuine there and real. I think there will be a lack of uptake now among team sports, and people may be returning to team sports as well. And I think a lot of the clubs, especially in the Pembrokeshire area, have already voiced a lot of concerns about that.
Yeah, you mentioned there about autonomy there, Fraser, about with individual sports, you can just do it when your calendar permits you to do it. But you also raised the point there about team sports actually taking people away from their families. And the last 15 months has helped men realise just how much that's been a factor. Now, we had Ross Hardy on the Pure West Sports Show a couple of weeks ago, and he mentioned about how Neyland Cricket Club have integrated the family and the community. Yeah. So it's not so much an us and them environment. Did you think that there'll be a push for more of that going forward?
I think that's highly dependent on the size of your club and your numbers, to be honest, Tom. I mean, Neyland Cricket Club have built a bit of a dynasty, in fairness to them, in that respect. I think they're probably an exception to the rule. I think the majority of clubs that are really a lot smaller based than Neyland maybe don't have the facilities to accommodate full families and that sort of thing. We're a Neyland Cricket Club, they do have 3 sides. They're now a very large club. I think it's perhaps the smaller club who are struggling for numbers a bit, who can't afford really to miss one or two people who will struggle as well. And we shouldn't forget here as well, we're only talking actually about the people who played here. When we talk about the pandemic, it's the elder generation as well, people whose maybe main fix of sport was wandering down to the club and seeing their old mates and sitting in the bar and watching on a Saturday. We've got to remember they've had something taken away from them as well. So, whilst I think in that respect, you'll have people who were watching will be keener to get back. I don't see viewing numbers going down, so to speak, but it is a participant, so it's a concern now.
That's a very good point. And Tammy, Fraser making the point there that sport is actually multi-generational. And I know that Haverfordwest Bluebirds, they've set up a service with Age Cymru as well to make sure that people are still getting that type of environment where they can talk about the matches and they can talk about the games, even now via Zoom. What do you think the impact on men's health in particular, where we've talked about kind of the isolating points of not being able to join sports, with Luke talking about the friend circles yesterday. If there is no sports hub, what's going to happen to those multi-generations, and also just people sharing stories and their experiences and how that's going to impact men going forward?
Yeah, and it's a really valid thing, isn't it? We know that research shows that if you do something repetitively over 3 weeks on a day-to-day basis, it becomes a habit. And that's kind of a short turnaround, isn't it? So to actually not be interacting, not to be engaging, not to be attending sports events or even taking part, it does have that impact on our well-being. I think it's really important to remember that good mental health is not one size fits all. So when we think about that intergenerational, it's about kind of re-engaging and how we go to actually bring everyone together again. And I see that as a community thing. I think that's everyone pulling together.
Yeah. And everyone pulling together as part of a community thing. One thing that I've been surprised at producing the Pure West Sports Show is just how much all the different sports clubs know about other sports clubs. I was brought up in the village in West Wales, Littlehaven, played for Broadhaven Football Club, but I never really got that sense of I'm part of a wider network of sports teams. But one thing I've noticed being on the sports show and hearing from the likes of Fraser, Gordon, Bill and Ben is just how much everyone does share those stories across other teams and across other sports. So Fraser, do you think that with hopefully people watching, those numbers will stay quite high if the teams can get together? Do you think that those stories are still going to be shared, which means that there's still going to be an element of connectedness between people and between men in particular?
I think so, absolutely. I think that's one of the more positive aspects of the rise of social media, actually, in the last few years' time. I think you've got players and clubs can keep in touch and communicate a lot more easily, and of course via email as well, and of course Zoom, and then as we're perhaps doing now in that sort of respect. So yeah, I think that interaction will still be there. There is hopefully another side now that will come to what Tammy's talking about as well. There will be a lot of people who've been championing at the bit the last 15 months who love playing football and rugby and perhaps don't have the restrictions elsewhere, or maybe don't yet have young families or that responsibility, who are just desperate to get out and play again, and we may see it in upturn or enthusiasm and training numbers in that respect. So, for all the concerns about the effect the pandemic may have on numbers in team sports locally, there is also a suggestion that it may reinvigorate some people as well, and we hope it leans more towards that side. But no, I think the improved communication lines we've seen in the last decade means clubs do keep in touch a lot better, and I think there'll still be a lot of sharing in communication stories in that respect.
Yeah, and of course, teams doesn't have to just be sports teams. It can be work teams and volunteer teams as well. And I'm just thinking now, like, we're part of a team through the Pure West Sports Show, and that Monday evening is one of the highlights of my week because we get to share those stories, we get to have a bit of banter, we get to laugh along with it, which is the same elements that comes out in a team sport. So, like you, I'm sharing the optimism that I think once there's clarity as to if someone on the other football team or the other rugby team tests positive, I then need to isolate for 10 days. Once that's gone, hopefully there will be a big upswing and people will realise what they missed. Tammy, is there anything that's left burning that you want to ask Fraser as we've got him here on Early Breakfast this morning?
No, it's just for all of us just to keep promoting, to keep talking about it, to keep encouraging people. Whatever interaction we do, as long as it's positive, we get into a really good trance-like state and we get the best out of ourselves.
Yeah, and I think what Tammy says there is just about the interaction, and you made the point earlier, Tom. It's not just about the top level, it's about your five-a-side groups. You might just do it one lunchtime a week or one time after work on a Friday or something. It's about yoga groups meeting up. It's about casual runners and walkers, just meet up, not to compete or to push themselves with times, but simply as a social thing, maybe to have a trot around the city and a drink or something afterwards. It's those groups as well, sport and exercise and interaction. It's so important to them as well as the people on the higher scale as well.
Amazing. So sport, it's good for mental health, it's good for your physical health inherently, because you're using your body and you're moving to whatever limits that you've got there. So, Fraser, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Tomorrow, Tammy and I, we're going to be joined, and we're going to by Sally from Lifeseeker magazine, and we're going to be talking about men in the context of their families and communities. So we've touched on it a little bit this morning, talking about the fans that are going to watch that aren't necessarily involved in the team sport directly or the individual sport, but looking at what other things men can do to kind of integrate. And Fraser touched on it earlier about men who are realizing just how valuable their families are. And so hopefully through talking with Sally tomorrow, we'll find out more activities that can be carried out as a family unit to also promote and increase that mental well-being. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Tammy, we'll catch up again tomorrow morning. Fraser, enjoy your day. We've got a little bit of Doja Cat and Scissor now coming for you here on Pure West Radio.